The views expressed in this episode, as with all episodes of the podcast, are purely host opinions. The content on this podcast should not be taken as indisputable fact. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome, listeners, to our next episode of the Full Bottle Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sarah Porter. I joined Citrus Australia just really only a few weeks ago, but I am very excited to introduce our brand new co-host, Rachel Hall. Rachel is joining us from the meat and livestock sector and also has experience most recently in the water sector. She's based up in Brizzy and she's here to say g'day.
Hello. How are we doing? It's a big day. It's a big day.
It is a big day, Rach. It's so exciting. Rach and I have worked together in the past and we're very excited to be working together again. First of all, Rach, is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions
Yeah,
about
of course.
joining us and how you feel about things?
No point in a podcast if there's no questions.
Just tell us a little bit about your background and why you're going to be so good at helping with this podcast, Rach.
All right. So, hi everybody. I'm Rachel Hall. I'm very, very happy to be here. It's very, very exciting. So as Sarah said, I used to work in the livestock sector. I grew up in the livestock sector. I was on beef cattle properties up in central and north Queensland pretty much my whole life. From there, I kind of said goodbye to ag for a little bit, and I actually went to Brisbane to study film. So film production, film screen, new media, at the Queensland University of Technology. I had a blast there. It was in the middle of COVID, so it was a bit hectic, but it was a great time. I loved it. I specialized in screenwriting and sound design. So podcasting's a pretty easy segue from there, which was great. But yes, after that, I went back to ag. I worked at Meat and Livestock Australia for a few years in a couple of different roles, and I loved that. That was really fun. But yeah, this year I then went and worked in the water sector up in the Sunshine Coast in the utilities. But then, yeah, Sarah gave me a phone call and said, hey, do you want to come be my offsider? And I'm just like, why not? It's Sarah. Thank you again, Sarah, for giving me this opportunity. I'm very excited to be here, not just in this role of comms officer, but also, being a co-host on the podcast. Oh my God.
Know. Well, I just can't tell you how excited I am that you've coming along to give us an enormous hand. You've already made such an enormous contribution to the team already, Rach. You've been at it non-stop since you jumped on board, including a trip already over to Mildura to see the company's headquarters. How did you find that?
It was great. It's been a while since I've been down to Victoria, and especially country Victoria, especially not in that northwestern region that far. It's incredible. Like, it actually reminds me a lot of Queensland, funnily enough. Like, we were driving through on our big bus with everyone on our special little tour. It was a blast. And it was I was born in Longreach, and it reminded me a lot of Longreach. It was just Longreach with grapevines everywhere, which I think is really cool.
Some citrus.
And some citrus, obviously, with a lot of citrus, which is obvious. That's the important part, obviously. But no, it's gorgeous country down here. Everyone's really nice. It was great to meet everyone in the team and learn more. I don't know anything about citrus. I'd never even seen a citrus tree before. Actually, I probably have, just a small little, not fully fleshed out, grown orchards. Yeah. I've never seen fruit on a tree in that capacity before. And it was, you guys should have seen it. I went up to Sarah and I was like, oh my God, Sarah, it's a citrus tree. It was great.
It was pretty exciting. And look, it was one of my first tours around that region of the orchards and of all the things that you and I have got to learn to talk citrus around. And we even came across what we were introduced to, a 71-year-old orange tree, which was out at one of the New South Wales research plants with David Marks. Just spectacular tour, wasn't it, Rach? The topic for today is actually more tours and some of the regional forums that Citrus Australia is conducting this month and into next month. It's a very busy time for the team. I can't sort of get my mind around everything that they're trying to achieve or are achieving in the last couple of weeks and in the coming weeks, including the tour that we were on. We will be talking to our beloved CEO, Nathan Hancock, a little bit later on in this podcast, just to tell us a little bit about those forums, why they are important, why they matter. But Rach, the Orange Tree was for you a first time. That was a pretty big event. What do you think? What were some of the other highlights in terms of we saw some pretty spectacular packing and storage facilities along that 2.5 day tour. What else do you reckon you learnt as a newcomer to the industry?
I think I really gained an appreciation for the amount of work and knowledge that goes into, I guess, growing and maintaining and harvesting these plants. Because obviously I grew up around livestock, which obviously there's a lot of work that goes into that. But with a tree, there's such a extra layer you have to worry about. Pests you have to worry about, the soil composition, the amount of water, diseases, how they're harvested. They were talking about how there's different ways to harvest it, either if it's a snap method or you have to trim it. Also, how much the look of the fruit really impacts its, saleability value, and that's a really big challenge for growers and packers and resellers and everybody. And also I thought the infrastructure of the packing shed was really interesting as well, like all the conveyor belts
amazing.
And how well they're washed, and they have specific ways of counting everything into the crates. There's a specific name that they call the crates, but I forgot. But it's just there's so, and this is the same, I guess, with any industry that you go into. There's so much more than you expect when you really get deep into everything, and it's really exciting. I'm really excited to see so much more of it, which kind of segues into our topic of today, because there's so many more forums that are happening over the next couple of months across the country, and it's really exciting.
I know. From Victoria, New South Wales, right up to Queensland, where you are heading next.
Yes.
Well, no, sorry, further into Queensland, because you're up there already, Rach. I think our listeners will, hopefully, well, I'm sure they will be, particularly our Queensland listeners, will be absolutely delighted that we've got a warm body sitting up in Brizzy, ready to rock and roll up into the Sunshine State. We are about to bring Nathan in to tell us about these regional forums, how they've been going, why they matter. I can't wait to hear more from Nathan, and we'll be hearing a recap later from you, Rach, on just some of those dates. So get your diaries out for the upcoming forums dates, and a little bit about those programs from Nathan, and then from Rach after this. I'll talk to you after we've spoken to Nathan. Rach, thank you so much. And as promised, we're about to introduce Nathan Hancock, who is Citrus Australia's very well-known CEO, much-loved CEO. You've been in the job for a number of years, Nathan, tried, trusted and true. We know you've been on the road a fair bit, Nathan, in the last number of weeks, including Vietnam and Hong Kong, and a number of local visits, bit of domestic travel in there. Most importantly, as we introduced earlier, you're in the middle of a lineup of 6 regional forums from Victoria to New South Wales. You're heading up to Queensland momentarily, and then over to Western Australia. Can you tell us what the main purpose of these regional forums is?
Thanks, Sarah. It all sounds very glamorous, doesn't it? But I can tell you It does take its toll.
It's dusty and tiring work.
It does take its toll. Look, the next few weeks is regional forums focus, as you say, and we've had a couple of great events already in the Murray Valley and the Riverland. The key to these things is really about getting a balance of messages that we want growers to hear around nationally important and significant things that are happening that may not be in their day-to-day thinking, and also blending that with things that are happening for them on the ground. And this time of year being spring, it was pretty easy to identify topics that were really important to them. They really focused around what are the pests and problems that they're dealing with at the moment in this early springtime, because that's when we see a lot of these things cropping up. It'll be something new this season that wasn't quite as prevalent last year, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's really about mixing up content that is funded through the R&D levy, as well as other partners that we have across the supply chains, to bring messages to growers that are important to them for a whole range of reasons.
And are you finding, the first of 6 forums was held in the Murray Valley region, close not only to your heart, obviously, but to your home. Tell us a little bit about this one. Was it a big tick, a big success?
Yeah, look, the regional forum content was decided by the Regional Advisory Committee in the Murray Valley. So that always helps, that if you've got some local growers telling you the things that they're seeing on their farm or saw last year and want to remind people about this year, that sort of thing, that makes it really helpful. So we were able to get out on a couple of properties this time in the Murray Valley, some collaboration with Southern Cross Farms and with Minter Magic, the 2 properties we visited, which was really nice of them to host us. We spoke a little bit about solar, the use of solar in offsetting some cost that growers are experiencing through energy price increases, and how the farm at Southern Cross out at Nangelock Way, was using solar to offset some of that cost. We heard about pests and diseases that are prevalent at the moment. So some things like earwigs, which are pretty bad in newer, younger plantings. They tend to have more impact on those types of plantings, as well as, fruit fly, which is Queensland fruit fly, which has been an issue across the entire eastern seaboard. And again, in the Murray Valley, it was a focus because it's that time of year when the first flies are coming out again, and they need to get straight on top of their baiting and trapping and those sorts of things. So really topical. And again, we went over to Darren Minter's property, later in the afternoon, and we saw some new equipment he's using, both a spot sprayer that can identify weeds and spray in the orchard and take out weeds that are a problem. So you might be targeting flat weeds rather than grasses, broadleaf weeds instead of grasses. So you can grow an inter-row crop if you want to, but not have it dominated by weeds that are a pain. And then there was another piece of equipment which modified the amount of spray that was going out, depending on the amount of canopy that was there. And Darren was telling us that he's had savings of, I think, 60% in the amount of spray that he's putting out, simply because the spray's only going on when the machine detects foliage. So that was really good. And growers got in and had a look. We sprayed the orchard with some water, and we could get in and see that had great penetration into the canopy. So that was really interesting. And I think that sort of technology is what's going to be featuring at a lot of the events that we do over the next few weeks, and certainly into the Australian Citrus Congress in March next year.
Oh, good. I was actually just about to ask that. Are we going to see exciting demonstrations like that in field at the Congress between the 18th and 20th of March next year?
Yeah, we certainly are. And before that too, coming up in, well, we didn't touch on the Riverland yet, but the event we had in the Riverland, Costa Group had us on farm after we did some sort of PowerPoint presentations at the Renmark Hotel. We went out to the Costa's property in Paringa and had a look at some adaptations they've made to travelling platforms. So platforms that are moving autonomously through or not autonomously, they're self-propelled. And there's one of the people on the equipment is responsible for its steering and the speed that it's travelling at, but it's not a PTO or dragged along by a tractor or anything. It's self-propelled. There was 3 people up on that unit, two picking, one managing the quality as it was coming past, so taking long stalks off and leaves and those sorts of things. And then there was a ground crew of, I think, 4 people picking with modified ladders that they've developed, which they say is pretty close to a full team picking on the ground. I think the savings are probably made in the long term, fatigue management for staff, a bit more comfortable for staff in terms of pickers not having to travel as far to put fruit into a bin and not carrying such a heavy weight. So they're useful, and also not going up and down ladders repeatedly all day. So there's some advantages there. And I think the quality also, it seemed like there was advantages in that aspect. But there's still some time to go. But it was really good of Costas to let us on the farm and see that in operation. And I think it's a sign of the times that these sorts of modifications will come. Everyone asks me, when will we get a robotic picker, or when will we get something that replaces pickers? I think that's some time off, but these sorts of interventions or assistance to pickers is going to make a big difference in the short term.
Huge difference. Yeah.
They talked about needing to modify the tree canopy a little bit, which they're doing over time. So they're making those trees a little bit shorter, and they're also taking out some internal limbs to make it a little bit easier to move inside the tree. But I think overall that has a benefit as well on fruit quality too. So I think, it's a slowly evolving thing that we'll see over time as more and more people are looking to take some of the cost of the labour of harvest out of the system,
which have become prohibitive for quite a lot of farmers, haven't they? Those particular costs. Rach and I were saying before, just earlier on the podcast, that it was absolutely extraordinary for us to get out on farm and see some of the amazing techniques that are being used, particularly on some of those much bigger properties like Costa's, and some of the pruning techniques and so forth that are being used. We come from meat and livestock backgrounds, and it's just phenomenal for us to see the thought that needs to go into making these beautiful orchards manageable and operating at their optimum within cost. So Riverland was good. What was the highlight for Riverland for you?
I think certainly that that demonstration of that plant picking platform was really, really good. It was great to see the number of people turn out at the Riverland too. The morning session was, it started quite early. I think it was a 7:00 start or something for you to get your bacon and egg roll or whatever it was. And we sat down and listened to some talks that there's some consistency through the presentations we're giving. There's some detailed explanation of the plantings that have happened in each region. So Mara Milner has broken down the plantings for each major region and gives a presentation on those, what the current plantings are, what the bearing hectares are, how many non-bearing hectares there are and what that has, well, what that sort of implies the volumes will be out of that region. Dave Daniels has been spending a bit of time talking about the agrochemical toolbox, as we call it. So what are the controls that we have for endemic pests and disease in Australia, and what the reviews by APVMA might mean for those, and what the future holds in terms of potentially soft technologies coming along that help us to control those pests that cause damage to the fruit and reducing the quality of the fruit down to lower grades because of those visual sort of impacts that they create. And then another.
When you say, sorry to interrupt, Nathan, but just for those people who might be listening that don't necessarily understand what you mean by softer, explain what that means.
Yeah, so some of the trips that I've done and others have done over to Europe have revealed that there's this new form of technology or pest control that's happening where they're deploying lures, I guess is the right word for them, lures into orchards, sometimes in quite high densities, and they can have, depending on what the technology they're using is, but they can be a luring kill. So there's a pheromone being deployed that lures generally the silly old male, but I think there can be some female lures there as well. But the pheromones attract the males. They come over, land on the lure, and on touch they absorb a chemical which knocks them out, and they're gone. Or there's others that they're a pheromone that there's so much pheromone produced from these lures that it just confuses the poor old male, and he flies around and gets exhausted and passed. and he can't find a female mate.
Maybe we need that in the human world somewhere along the line.
I'm too married and too old for comments like that, Sarah. And so there's these different ways that they're using pheromones in particular to either lure and kill or to confuse. I can't think of the term. It's the proper use of the term, but it's essentially confusing the male as to where its partner is, and so they can't reproduce, and it knocks down the numbers dramatically, if not completely. And there's a couple of pests that are of concern for us, like mealybug, certain types of mealybug, and red scale, which this has been proven effective on. And so we are hoping to see that technology, and some of it has come to Australia in trial form, but we're wanting to see it deployed more widely in more pests in Australia in the future.
So in a nutshell, when you use the words a softer approach, it's using Mother Nature's powers.
Yes, in a way, it's capturing
rather than chemicals.
It's capturing those other elements instead of just relying on either contact spray or something being present on a leaf or in the phloem of a tree, xylem or phloem of a tree, that a pest is sucking that into them, ingesting it. So instead of contact or ingestion, there's also pheromone for luring or confusion. Yeah, so it's just another way of approaching it. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So that will you be talking about that when you head up into Queensland shortly, or what will the focus be otherwise when you're in Far North Queensland and South Queensland next?
So those two topics at least will be part of it. There's another one that I was just about to say as well, which was we're looking to try and understand growers' interest in how healthy the tree is they're buying from a nursery. So we have this thing in Australia called Oz Citrus, which is the Clean Budwood scheme, and that guarantees that you get clean budwood and clean seed when you're starting the nursery tree. But in Australia, it's different from other countries where they take the next step and say, your nursery has received this clean material. Now we're going to have a process that guarantees that that tree remains clean and free of pest and disease until it's sold to you or you pick it up. And so we're testing the water with industry to see how they go about buying their trees, what's important to them in terms of the health of the tree or where they're getting the tree from, and whether they would like to see us push forward with a voluntary scheme for nurseries. And so Dr. Jess Lai has produced a questionnaire, which we have been sharing at each of the events and will continue to do so. And I think they'll go up on our website or out through an email as well for people to participate in. The object of this is to get nurseries to produce a tree of high quality, and it's really a planning step in case we do have an incursion of Huanglongbing and the Asiatic citrus psyllid, because that's what we'll need to do from a mandatory perspective anyway. So why not get the steps out of the way at the moment, get everyone used to using a system that produces a high quality tree, so that if we have to, when it comes to becoming mandatory, the steps are much easier and there's much less to do under a lot of pressure. The examples of other countries where nurseries weren't prepared, some went out of business, some couldn't some just chose not to proceed. We think if we do this voluntarily now and get a high uptake, the transition, should we get an incursion, heaven forbid, should we get an incursion, that part of the process will be simpler, we hope. So that's one of the topics as well. Hope I haven't missed anybody out. Anyway, there's some of the key things. There are some hot topics in far north Queensland. Growers are concerned about the impending report on the import risk analysis for Vietnam pomelos into Australia. So we'll probably have a bit of a chat about that. They probably have questions around the imports of limes from Mexico, which was also not approved. It's also a process in place at the moment. We're happy to chat about those things. Anyway, we're looking for R&D ideas that growers want to see implemented to improve some aspect of farming, or perhaps further down the supply chain, so that things are moving forward in the R&D space that they feel benefits the industry the best. So across all regions, we're looking to do that.
Now, Nathan, is there still time to register? Far North Queensland is this week. Is there still time to register for the I keep saying South instead of Southern Queensland Forum?
Yeah, the Southern Queensland Forum is the week after. It's on a Thursday, and yes, there's still plenty of time. You can contact the office at citrusaustralia.com.au, or give Trace a call on 0350236333. There's definitely some social media put out there. Thank you, Rachel and Sarah, and you would probably have received either an email or text from us as well. But please do reach out and register for those. It's important that we sort of know how many to cater for. Everyone remembers the catering after an event. They might not always remember the topic, but they always remember whether or not there was a good feed. So,
Nathan, you're taking a few staff with you into the Queensland regional forums. One of which is Rachel, co-host of the Full Bottle podcast. She is a Queensland lass. But she will be seeing only her second round of citrus farms up in far north Queensland and then southern Queensland. What can she expect to see that might blow her mind in terms of contrasts from the beautiful Murray Valley and Mildura surrounding regions to up in her home state?
I think one thing that will be different immediately and obvious is it probably won't be quite as cold. It was cold and drizzly here when you were here last week. So, yeah, I'm hoping it might be slightly better weather. I think you'll see very heavy flowering. I've heard that the flowering is quite heavy through southern Queensland. So there was a bit of flower out last week. I'm assuming it will still be flowering next week when we're there. But I think the way that orchards are pruned in Queensland is quite different to southern Australia or eastern seaboard. So that's always sort of stood out for me. There's quite a lot of attention to detail in pruning, particularly mandarin and lemon types up that way. It really comes down to needing to get light into the canopy, but also have good penetration for particularly fungal disease control. So that's important. And it also really helps with fruit quality as well in terms of growing large fruit, which is key to success in most markets. So I think those are probably the things you'll notice. Variety-wise, very different as well. We'll probably see quite a lot of imperial orchards where you would have mostly seen oranges down here, I would have thought, and a few aphoras. But up that way, you'll see quite a lot of imperial mandarins, lemons, Murcots probably be the things you'll notice the difference, and very few orange orchards up that way. I will just jump in here before I think you've got another question for me, but it's interesting for Rach to be seeing her first citrus tree, let alone citrus orchard. I heard in a talk the other day that you know the books, kids' books, and they have A is for apple and B is for what's C for? Carrot. Most people would say carrot, right? So, and here's the bit where I fail here because I can't remember the exact country, but it's somewhere in Europe. Pretty sure it was somewhere in Europe. Kids can't relate to the picture of a carrot in the ABC books these days because they have been so used to buying carrots in plastic bags, right? You know, everything's pre-packed and all prepared and everything. They don't understand the shape of the carrot or the green bit on the end.
Wow.
Because it's either supplied in a bag cut up already, so it's just in little discs, or it's shredded. They haven't seen a full carrot. What's the world coming to?
That's
What's the
not
world coming
good.
to, I ask you.
That's not good. That's a step beyond kids asking where milk comes from, and you say the supermarket.
That's right.
That's a bit of it. That's a shame.
And I think I don't know if you talked about it earlier in your intro, but that's why it's really important at the basic level that we do these farm familiarisation visits, because it does help people conceptualise what citrus growing is all about. So just give me a nod if you did talk about you did? Okay. Yeah, well, we've been running for a couple of years now, and I think it really helps people that are making decisions about our industry to understand how our industry operates. And so from the very basic, what does an orange tree look like, right through to how does it get off and how does it get into the packing and the marketing, and how does it get from where you grow it to where you sell it, whether it's here in Australia or overseas. It's really important. So anyway, we've digressed.
That's all right. It was certainly, Rach and I chatted just a short minute ago about how much we learned on that familiarisation tour. Definitely about packing and storing of Australian produce and the export, the nature of our exports, and how specialised that entire industry is as well. Nathan, we've got the Riverina Forum is coming up in Griffith. Rach is going to run through some dates and times, etc. We're going to ask our listeners to get out their diaries and pens to pop everything in towards the end of this podcast. But Griffith is on October 22, and then we're heading over to Western Australia. What can listeners expect to see and hear over there, do you think?
Well, in the Riverina, we're also doing a juice focused session as well, which we've been doing the last few. And that's become a real hot topic for everyone who grows oranges, and even some mandarin types too, because the price of orange juice on the futures market has gone up significantly, and that's meant that juice prices for off-run navels and some Mandarin types has become pretty respectable, I suppose, in terms of what we usually get for off-run navels in terms of pricing. So that's important, but I think the longer-term structure of the juice growing industry is an important one too. So we'll be talking about that at the Riverina, as well as some of the other topics we talked about, and we're being hosted there by by Mario's packhouse near Griffith, and that'll be a really great time to get out and see some new faces around that district. Then in Western Australia, that industry has really evolved since my time in the industry, dating back probably nearly 20 years now. There was some very big orchards growing in Western Australian terms to the north of Perth. And I think we'll be going up and looking at one of the earlier large orchards that was in the Taddies family, and looking at some different new tech interventions there that are being used by its new owners in Mora Citrus and Northern Valley Packers. So that'll be a really good event as well. Lots of local content, as well as some of the things that we've been talking about here. There's an autonomous tractor being displayed there.
Oh, wow.
Which will show growers how you can adopt tractors that you have on farm already. You don't need to buy a new tractor for this. You can rig it up with this bolt-on technology, and it will drive around the orchard, and you can get it to do spraying or to do slashing or other jobs like that. So that's really interesting. Yeah, whole range of different things like that.
My goodness. And a tractor's like this going to sit down and have a smoko with us?
And that's the beauty of it. They can just keep going and going. So
don't need a break.
That's right.
Well, Nathan, that is, I don't know, do you get to hand your passport back into your family for a hot second after this extraordinary, length of trips that you've been on?
We have a thing at home. It's the calendar on the wall, and I write on that from time to time, and the family says, that wasn't on the calendar. And I'll say, I'm pretty sure it was, and they just haven't looked because it's got lines through all of it. So,
gosh,
yeah.
Busy times.
Yeah, well, you can't do this job from sitting at a desk alone. No. You need to get out and talk to the people that you're trying to do things on behalf of, and you've got to talk to the people that
who matter,
make the rules, and you've also got to go and see what else is out there that you can bring back and share with industry. And I hope that we as a team are doing that on behalf of industry well, and we're always looking for input and feedback, and also what are the next new big ideas that we can help bring to industry and look back on in many years to come and say, isn't it great that we did that? And maybe it came from this podcast or something else down the track. So certainly I think the Australian Citrus Congress, which you touched on really briefly, which is in March next year, is meant to be, we're aiming for it to be a real showcase of all of the available technologies that are they're designed to try and help growers become more efficient, and the focus there is efficiency on labour, but it could also be efficiency in spray delivery, as I talked about before, efficiency in managing labour through various apps and software, et cetera, et cetera. We know that's a real pinch point for industry. Labour is extremely expensive here in Australia. It's can be difficult to get, depending on whether you use the PALM scheme or a working holiday makers, etc. And it can be difficult to manage all the different variations in hours that need to be watched, whether it's the 38-hour a week plus overtime over 8 weeks, or the 30 hours minimum offering to palm workers over a 4-week period, or the minimum of 20 hours for a palm worker, so before you can deduct, things like accommodation and travel, etc. So there's a whole range of things that growers are pulling their hair out trying to stay on top of, and productivity is another one. So we're hoping to showcase all the available tech, whether it's in the field literally or in our exhibition booths, and we're really encouraging anyone who's listening to this that's got that sort of technology to get in touch with us and book a booth or become a sponsor. And yeah, let's see you all over there in March, and I'm sure we'll talk again about this in detail as we get closer.
Fantastic. And Rach and I are about to go through the upcoming dates for those forums. And of course, there's always more information on Citrus Australia's website, which you just type citrusaustralia in .com.au. And that was Nathan Hancock, CEO for the last numerous years. I probably shouldn't dob him in for being in the job for as long as he has been. He's been in the job for a long time, and he knows what he's talking about, doesn't he? Nathan Hancock, obviously Citrus Australia's CEO. They're telling us everything that you need to know about past and upcoming regional forums in Australia this year. Rach, would you like to just, so we can have everyone get out their diaries, just to recap some of those dates and times for the upcoming forums? What should people be popping in their diaries?
All right, so everyone up in the far North Queensland region, so up around the Atherton Tablelands and in that kind of area, there is a very soon forum. It's going to be on Wednesday, the 2nd of October. Starts at 3 p.m. at the Mareeba Leagues Club. Get there at around 2:45. Get in, get your seat, get everything. There's going to be
warm up.
Yeah, warm up. There's going to be a heap of great presentations from the team at Citrus Australia and also the guys at the DPI. And there's going to be a nice little fun networking event afterwards. And then on the Thursday, the 10th of October, it's going to be for our Southern Queensland growers at Ironbark Citrus in Boynewood. That's going to also start at about 2 p.m. So make sure you get around there. And then a little bit later in the month is our Riverina guys in New South Wales on the 22nd of October, which is a Tuesday. We'll be having our Aboriginal and also our Juice Industry Forum at 2 p.m. at Mario's Packhouse in Hanwood. And we're also going to be going out west in November, but there are still some details to come for that, but we will let you know as soon as we know.
And when we say out west to all our listeners, obviously we mean Western Australia. The team is heading right over properly west, not just west to Mildura from us. Or they rate they're getting on long distance planes almost and heading over that way. Thanks for that, Rach. Obviously, for any other information that any listeners might like to grab again, please head to Citrus Australia's website. We have got the programs up on our site there, on the website there for those upcoming forums in Queensland and over to Western Australia. And I think that's probably it, Rach. What anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Guess make sure you guys are following us on all of our socials. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're also in a couple of growers groups. But if you need any of the links to that, just go to citrusaustralia.com.au.
Thank you, Rach. And thank you again for joining the team. It's super duper exciting. We will, both Rach and I will catch you next time. Stay listening.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.